You made it. So Lawbringer just got reworked, and I'm sure all of you guys have been playing him for a while now. And to be honest, I haven't really seen that much Lawbringer players out there. Usually when a huge rework drops, we'll see maybe 4 Lawbringers in a lobby, but I've only seen like maybe 1 or 2 like every other game, which is a little bit weird. But of course, Lawbringer has been changed in ways that Lawbringer players did not really want. So I can understand why Lawbringer players wouldn't want to touch the character with the 10-foot pole anymore, but this is just the first day and it's not empirical evidence. My last video was discussing what I was worried about for Lawbringer, and I'd say most of it has come to fruition. The character just doesn't feel that iconic. He's still relatively the same hero in certain regards to his animations and his fighting capabilities. And honestly, I can't forgive what Ubisoft has done to him because he doesn't really feel that good to play. I think he's great when it comes to just pure viable offense to an extent, or actually chain offense, not neutral offense, because his neutral offense is kind of mid. But I mean, Lawbringer is the character. I don't know how you can mess up this badly. We expected things to change, but for the character to remain relatively the same, but I don't know how you could butcher this character so badly. He feels clunky to play, especially just leaving in the 1100 ms impale after a heavy parry still. It feels kind of lazy, but with the unblockable pressure being pretty darn good, people who didn't play Longarm before will be playing him now. My boy Lawbringer now is better in team fights now, since of course hyper armor exists for his chain heavies. It's like what I always say, people who have hyper armor, you can just kind of throw attacks in team fights and do well and take decent trades against people that are kind of just oonga boogaaing themselves, you know, who aren't really thinking and using their brain. So that's the nice thing about Lawbringer right now. He feels a little bit more viable, but I will say he doesn't feel like 100% viable in my opinion, and that's what a rework should be doing, is making them incredibly strong or just strong enough to deal with all the nonsense in this game. If you played the testing grounds for any period of time for less than 5 minutes, you'll realize that Highlander's rework is redonkulous, and if you remember, Lawbringer's rework was also really powerful at the same time, and they seem to have over-nerfed this character and given him some weird quirks in my opinion. I just don't think there's a lot of changes that really make it look like this character has gotten reworked. He's much stronger in team fights with the hyper armor. His hitboxes still remain the same since they already buffed it overall. He's lost the stun and stamina damage. Stamina damage I'm okay with removing, but the stun, especially after the heavy parry riposte, which is the tap that he does, that is gone, so there's not really a mix-up anymore unless you just go straight into your unblockable heavy, which is an easier access of just going into more unblockables, so unblockable after unblockable, and there's just no real variety and choice between what you use for the character anymore. Look, I get it, stuns are really annoying, especially when it comes from a top heavy that deals a lot of damage, but for a measly light attack that does 12 damage that stuns and can go into a follow-up light attack, a 500 ms light attack or a 400 ms top light, just block top first of all. Like, that does not seem overpowered at all, and just having a little bit of those stun capabilities makes this character unique yet viable to some degree. It blows my mind that they would just remove all stuns like that. It just doesn't make any sense. Make all the characters feel the same and no one feels unique anymore. Literally none of the characters feel unique unless they have some secret tech that you can abuse or have some cool cheese stance animations like Shaolin. Shaolin is quite frankly one of the only unique characters left in the game, and I'm not even talking about Highlander anymore because Highlander literally feels like one of the most hilarious characters with his dodge caber toss now, because it's ridiculously strong and annoying. Now Lawbringer kind of feels like a pseudo Jang Jun, where you just do light into unblockable, and bash into unblockable. I don't really like that. Lawbringer had way more pizzazz than before, and now he just doesn't have much going for him when it comes to the style and the finesse of the character. I mean, come on man, even Jang Jun, characters like Warmonger, Afira, even after a heavy parry, they can do those wall splat things, the choke, the bash, the wall splat, left side heavy from Afira, Centurion punch and knee. They get their freaking side heavy, the max amount of damage, dude. 27 damage for Jang Jun, freaking 40 damage, 42 damage for Afira. Centurion has like freaking a 40 damage punish. Like, what are they cooking? Reduce the range of this freaking impale. My goodness, how dense can you be? Who are you listening to? Who are you listening to? I don't understand. Please, riddle me that. Who are you? Who told you this information? They must have been a spy. They must have been that person who hates Lawbringer more than they freaking hate Orochi. It's gotta be one of those people that you've listened to. It has to be. There's no real person that actually thought this was a good rework. Yes, I get it. The game changes. The meta shifts. You balance accordingly. But this doesn't excuse you, because you want to know why? They decided to make Afira a character based on freaking wall splats and iframes for days and crushing counters, where she gets the biggest amounts of damage from a heavy parry. She is, quite frankly, one of the best characters in the game for parrying heavy attacks. Do you understand me? Do you understand how powerful this is and how their philosophy has evolved over the time, regardless of how the meta has shifted? They make a character incredibly powerful, give them very powerful heavy parry punishes, great hit stuns, and ganks for their tier 1s and tier 3s and feats in general. And it's just like, come on, man, are you serious? Ocelotl gets a forward damage light that's 16, mind you. Afira gets tons of wall splat potential, Jane June gets his choke, and while Lawbringer just gets nerfed to the ground in that regard. Absolutely disgusting behavior. Make it make sense and make it more consistent, because I haven't seen a nerf for Afira's feats in the longest time, nor for her heavy parry punishes. And Afira heroes don't even try to justify that you have to position yourself well, because in reality there are literally walls everywhere in the base and anywhere across the map, okay? There's walls everywhere. Wall splats are very common, especially with how big your heavy attacks displace the opponent. But anyways, Lawbringer felt unique, especially after heavy parries, because there were plenty of options for you to do. That's just my personal opinion, and I think that's why a lot of people still kept playing him, even though he was kind of dog shit tier, unless you were literally the 1% who was parrying every single attack. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt good pairing with him, especially with the heavy parry and getting a huge amount of damage, which was totally unbalanced. But removing those personal qualities is such a bad idea when you could have just nerfed the damage overall. Now, they did make it so that Lawbringer can still impale after a light parry, and what's neat is that you can also still do a long arm, so that's pretty cool. The long arm does give you frame advantage, and you can go into quite a few mix-ups. Now, I was doing some testing here and there, and if you get a light parry, you can either go for the max punish, or you can go for an impale if there's wall nearby, and then land the long arm and go into your heavy follow-up light into an unblockable mix-up. Now, obviously that does less damage, but if they don't block the follow-up top light, which is still 400 MS, you will get potentially more damage. However, it takes longer, and you have the possibility of not being able to get it at all. But of course, you do enter your chain unblockable mix-up. I will say that if you are in your chain heavy unblockable mix-up and they're able to get up, they can just light you out of it because you don't have frame advantage, but that is a read that they'll have to make themselves, so it could be mighty useful. With those damage numbers in line, I believe it's a punish of 33 damage, but I think a lot of people, especially John Aligner, which he just made a video on, Lawbringer does have a very powerful punish right now at the moment, where essentially if he gets a light parry and he goes into his ad mortem, he will be able to initiate a bash right afterwards, and it will be guaranteed as long as you don't do the follow-up tap. This is obviously a bug, but you can enjoy this for the time being. There will most likely be a 1 week patch, and you won't be able to do that 38 damage anymore, so have fun while you can. And I made a poll here, and it seems like a lot of people do agree with me as well, or just in general they don't like the rework on its own. It's fantastic that you have your unblockables that you can utilize in team fights and all over the place, and that's why I'm such an advocate for Lawbringer getting higher damage punishes for his raw heavies, because right now they do 20 and then the follow-up light does 4 damage, so that's 24 damage, which is normal. However, I will say that if you do manage to land a heavy attack, you can still choose to go into your follow-up bash. So if people aren't paying attention, you can just do a follow-up 500 MS bash instead of just going for your follow-up type that goes into your unblockable mix-up, and therefore and ergo you can essentially get more damage. So 20 damage heavy attack and then a 13 damage follow-up light, so you get a 20 damage heavy and then a follow-up light attack after the bash for 13 damage, so that equates about 33 damage for a light parry, which isn't too shabby, but you do have to enter a pseudo mix-up that's not guaranteed. So if they are paying attention and can dodge 500 MS bashes, then you are just wasting your time, and you got a 20 damage light parry, which feels horrible, basically. Kind of feels like old pirate. And with the removal of the 2 chain light attacks, especially the 3rd chain one, which I don't think we needed, but we need at least the 2 chain light attacks into heavy, he doesn't really have like a good opener. His bashes are still pretty average. It's 300 to 500 MS startup with the 500 MS bash, and I believe they will be working on speeding up neutral bashes in general, most likely to 466, so that will solve that issue. However, for now, it's just not like the best opener. You still have to play defensively, which doesn't really make any sense. Like, you can play defensively and have really good chain options. It's kind of the same thing as Nobushi, and Nobushi, she has no neutral pressure. However, she does have tons of mix-ups with her undodgeable and hint stance, and is incredibly good defensively and in chain pressure. So that's what she has going for her. And Lawbringer kind of feels the same way. One of the reasons why I think he feels really clunky is simply because of the impale. The impale is 1100 ms, and this startup animation just doesn't look that good. It looks terrible, actually. And when you're used to seeing impale being much faster, it reminds me of old Armisha, where they slowed down his heavies tremendously and made it look incredibly slow just so that they could fit Ring the Bell in it. Now, if Ring the Bell was initiated with like an 800 ms heavy attack, it would be a little bit interesting. However, that's just how they decided to balance the game, unfortunately. And with Lawbringer having really slow impale for a light parry, it just doesn't feel fluid. He was one of the characters that had one of the best animations, but with this being removed, it really puts a dent on his animation quality in general. I think his light attacks were honestly fine too. They didn't look that terrible, and adding the 3 or 2 chain light attacks would have been really beneficial for him, so that people could actually go for some parries or not parry his follow-up heavy attack, since they'd be scared to take the light or eat the heavy in general, since he did have amazing chain pressure afterwards and he can go into an unblockable heavy finisher. I've gotten a few light parry impales, and it will take some muscle memory getting used to. I've tried doing it on a heavy parry too, and it looks so bad. It doesn't even look like an actual mix-up. Now, in reality, if they made it feightable from doing it from a heavy parry and people win for the parry, it'd be kind of an okay mix-up, but overall. But after a heavy parry, you could already do an ad mortem, your top one, your blind justice, and feint that for an actual mix-up. So the impale itself is already kind of useless. It just looks so dumb. Like, you might as well just remove it. You might as well just remove it, since you can't even target swap it. It's just really weird on why they would keep it even after 3 testing ground stages. I mean, 2 testing ground stages, and the 3rd iteration, they finalize all the changes and they let it fly. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Really, I just don't know what goes on in their minds. But enough about Lawbringer's changes that we already know and have discussed in the past video, where we want a roll catcher, which we didn't get, and we wanted impale on heavy parry and just reduce the damage and range of the impale in general, because then he wouldn't feel so disgusting to use, especially for heavy parry punishes, which the only viable option is just to use the follow-up light attack, which is only 12 damage. So he gets no good high damage punishes anymore, or at least like above average punishes like Afira or Centurion and other characters like that. So a little bit depressing. How does he fare in Dominion? I think he's really strong, and he doesn't really have any issues besides the fact that he can't roll catch people. So basically the same character with better team fighting capabilities and probably better ganking abilities to an extent, since he does have that triple tap or double tap to help assist free heavies on your enemies. The only problem for me was the triple heavy ganks, where his initial opener heavy only does 20 damage. You can't utilize that follow-up light attack, I believe, but 20 damage just to finish off somebody for like when someone does a kick or something is really weak, especially for a character like Lawbringer. I haven't had any real issues with Lawbringer. I've always played very well with him in matchmaking lobbies, even with decent players, because my parries and my reads are very good, because I've been playing this game for a very long period of time. And of course, if you haven't seen my 4,000 hours of For Honor, then that's probably one of the biggest reasons why you are bad at game. And if you watch it, you will actually gain 2 more inches. It's actually insane, so go ahead and watch those videos and all that good stuff. He's still Bomb-Bringer. He can still ledge people just by running around and using the impale, but you can't ledge people anymore with the heavy parry, which is a bit unfortunate, but it was a little bit too strong in my honest opinion, only in that regard. Lawbringer is still honestly a pretty solid tank, and the zone after heavy parry really comes in clutch. Would he benefit from more? I think he would. However, there's just not much that Ubisoft really wants to do for some reason, even though it's something that we have literally been asking for years. You'll see in some of these clips that people just roll away from your mix-ups, and it's a read that you will have to make, and I don't think the devs actually know how to make this game more fun, objectively fun. It's not a good experience to have people roll away from your mix-up and you just sit there and do nothing. People have argued that not every character needs a roll catcher, but if the character does not have a roll catcher, then they need some serious amount of HP and perks and better feats and stuff to keep them alive more. If you want to be an anchor, a tank, then we got to start making rolls. But right now, every character in the game is the best team fighter, okay? Team fighting is what this meta has evolved around to. That's why they give every character pins, they give everyone hyper armor, and tons of hitboxes for all of their heavy attacks. And when I mean everyone, I'm obviously being facetious, but quite frankly, a lot of the top tiers have one or more of these quirks, okay? And it feels like that's just how it is in every single team fight. That is the main reason why we need a roll catcher. Yeah, if we wanted to utilize the roll system in this game, then we need to start everything from scratch and nerf every character. And I'm okay with that personally, but right now the devs are just going full power creep, okay? They're going full power creep, and there's nothing we can do in that regard. So I'd be fine with Lawbringer not having a roll catcher, but that's only if like certain qualities that would exist, such as if Lawbringer was able to get revenge, he'd actually get more shields after surviving a gank of sorts. It would make team play more important and make it so that he could actually stay on a point and hold the point, as it is his job to do so. Whereas characters like Assassin, they try to attack a base and try to gank other people. That's their job, they're gankers or whatever, or team fighters. And then we have characters that gank and pin easier, and they don't get any shields, blah blah blah, all that good stuff. I think that would be a neat thing to do and give certain traits and perks like that to these types of characters. Now I already know that we have Vengeful Barrier and Bastion that gives more shield and more defensive buffs, but characters like Jane June, which is a heavy, is already one of the most elusive characters in the entire game, and he already has a roll catcher. Even Warlord has a roll catcher. It's not like the best roll catcher, but it does work from time to time. Hitakiri has a roll catcher, just doesn't make any sense. Even though Lawbringer is a hybrid, there's nothing that really separates him and makes him different from any of the other characters, or gives him a reason for you to choose him compared to like Jane June or Warlord. And realistically, other hybrid characters. We already have characters and feats that have some of these utilities, such as coming out of revenge. You get a little bit of HP, Thrilling Comeback, I believe that's what it's called. But having a perk or feat for more of these heavy characters to hold and anchor points would be pretty cool in my opinion. Yes, we have Juggernaut, but the characters that have Juggernaut already have roll catchers, so that's why it doesn't make sense that Lawbringer doesn't have a roll catcher at the end of the day. Let me know if you guys have any more ideas for that, and I think it'd be kind of cool to have a sort of roll system in For Honor where we could kind of balance feats and perks around those types of things. And I think that's all my thoughts about the character overall for Lawbringer. He's strong, he's still relatively the same. Unblockables, addition to the hyper armor and removal of the impale on heavy parry, which is just drastically changes the feel of the characters. So initially you just want to just use your unblockables for days and take trades, and I don't like that aspect about the character. It's still more viable, but you know, let me know what you guys think of the Lawbringer now. I made a poll and it seems like most of you guys actually don't really like the rework in general, and that's not what you guys were expecting. If it is, then let me know why, all that good stuff. And really excited to read your thoughts and opinions down below. We'll have a Highliner rework video coming out very soon, and the reflex card as well, more gameplay on my second channel, and I'll be streaming on Twitch at the same time. So thank you for the support, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye. See you later.